Do you hear it? Beautiful. Listen closely to the anthem of your demise.
Through the dark veil of space and time. This is Warp Chatter.
Okay, hello and welcome everybody once again to the Eye of Terror Studios. This is the Warp Chatter podcast. I am your host, Scuffy. This is the podcast for the Horus Heresy Legion's digital card game, talking about the game, the lore, Warhammer 40,000, Horus Heresy, all the good stuff, fun stuff. This is a podcast by players, for players, or for players by players. It's going to be the same thing, whatever you want to call it. We're here. We've got some players. Surprise! With me, I've got my crab co-host Axel Manning.
Howdy, howdy, ho!
And joining us today is Chrisofthemount.
You can call me Chris, but good. Or hi, everybody.
All right. It sounds like a knightly title, like Chrisofthemount has traveled far.
If only it was that awesome. If only. It goes back to college. I studied at a college near mountains, and I needed a name. This to date me, Scuff. This was AOL Instant Messenger days.
Oh wow! Okay.
I needed a name, and I just a buddy of mine decided to name himself his name at the Mount or of the Mount, and I decided to troll him and do my name Chrisofthemount. And that's how it started, and I just kind of kept it. So,
all right, well that works. Man, I remember those AOL Messenger days because like the key was to get a good name without like a bunch of numbers at the end.
Yes.
Yeah, so it was hard. Like that's where Scuffy like became my tag on was AOL. That was my first AOL account was Scuffy, which I mean, nobody email Scuffy at AOL.com now. That's possible, but don't. Yeah, like that.
You're able to, but please don't.
Please don't. I use that for all my spam email still to this day. Like anything I sign up for, and they're like, well, what's your email? I'm like, it's scuffy at AOL.com. Go ahead, send me all your advertisements. I'll never read them.
See, now that you've given your full email, for those who didn't know how AOL works, they now can email you.
They can.
So you've trapped
exactly.
yourself.
That's true. That's true. Yeah, but like, I remember the chat days. Did you ever do like chat rooms?
Not really. I mean, for me, it was more just the college scene of that. Everybody wanted the latest song lyric or something along those lines on the away message. And then you'd get the ping, and then you'd see how loud you could get your ping compared to everybody else, because then obviously you were more popular, that type of thing. But it wasn't more chat rooms or things like that. It was more just, I guess, texting before texting was a thing.
Yeah, I think AOL and Yahoo Messenger kind of led the way, and then texting became really easy to do on phones, because before you had to press the numbers. Yep. There once was a time when you had to use the numbers for your alpha keys. You still can if you have a jitterbug, right?
Yes. I feel so old, Scuff. Thank you.
It's true. It's true. Well, tell us about yourself. What got you into Legions? What's your Warhammer interest?
Oh, I took a different tact than I guess most of the people that have been on your podcast, Scuff and Axel. I am not a original card player, so I have never played Magic the Gathering. I've never played like Pokemon or any of those games, but I got into 40K lore when I was back in college. It was early 2000s, and I got into orcs. They are my at-home heart, I guess, army. I love making models for them, and basically I got into the lore, started reading all the books, started off with like Eisenhorn and things like that, got into the lore really heavy, and then basically kind of fell out of it around 2012, 2013, basically when 40K went from, I think, 5th to 6th edition, I think right around there. And then I got back into everything in 2019, and I was looking for a game on my phone that was 40K related or something related, and I came across this card game. And like I said, I've never played card games before. And so I saw it, and I was like, oh, this seems cool, and kind of dove into it and just kind of stuck with it. Didn't really get really serious with the game until COVID hit. So I was just playing around, and the coolest part about the game is that I feel like the legions actually act the way that you've read in the books or things like that. So that's kind of kept me hooked with the game And that's how I came into it. I'm like I said, I have never played the card scene. I've had friends that played Magic the Gathering and all that, and I'll be honest with you, I just looked at them and I said, I don't understand what you're doing, but I'm going to buy these little miniatures instead, and I'll paint these for like 10 hours.
Right. Well, because that's interesting, because I've seen people in chat or whatever. Like, I mean, when you come in from not having any experience from a card game perspective, like my perspective is, I mean, years in card games, so I'm understanding like why cards are designed a way where you think like, man, that he's a Space Marine. He shouldn't be a 1/1. Why is that the case? How come this 1/1 Space Marine is weaker than this 4/4 Imperial Army troop? That doesn't make sense, because on this tabletop it's the opposite, right? All Space Marine stats are always going to be like, they're guaranteed to be more powerful than an Imperial Army, unless it's an Ogryn or something. So so there's that big disparity, and then on top of that, building a deck, playing it works entirely different. You're not like, these are my units and I'm playing like, I mean, you probably have a card game that works in that way, but this is definitely not one of those. What would you say is probably the hardest thing for you to wrap your head around?
I guess I would put it the tempo of the game. And what I mean by that is not the fact that the game goes fast. But it took me a long time to go from, I guess I would say, letting your combatant set the table and then use your cards to take advantage of the scenario, versus you setting the tempo for the game. So, like, I'll give you an example. I started off, and it's ironic because it's the Night Lords event for the next 2 weeks. I'm a huge Night Lords fan. I started off with Night Lords, and I played with Sevatar for, it seemed like, forever. But the way I played Sevatar is that I always basically waited for the enemy to throw something on the field, because the Night Lords tend to have flank and they have terror. And so I would always try to counter them and go, all right, well then Sevatar can come and bash them in the face. But as I've gotten better at the game, what I've started to realize, and I still make this mistake continuously moving forward, is that in this card game, you have to set the tempo. If you set the tempo, even if it's not the strength of the card, if you put on a card that you just have board presence, or you have something where it helps it take advantage of the situation, you're in a much better position than if you're trying to, let's say, counter your enemy. And I guess in my mind, when I played 40K, it was more, you start to do what you want with the field, but you always had in your mind, okay, how do I counter these orc bikers or the drop pod troops or things like that? And in this game, it's just, you set the tempo and you make your combatant fight you. You dictate the field of battle, because then they have to, counter what you're doing. And that puts them on like flat-footed, basically. And then therefore you can go in for the kill strike much earlier than I anticipated. The other thing I will say is that the games are quick. And I don't mean that, sometimes you get like a Vulcan or somebody, but like, I always thought that card games, like when I watched my friends play Magic the Gathering or things like that, they would take a long time. Like they would take, they would be definitely a little bit of strategy, things like, not to say where Legions doesn't have strategy, but there's definitely like activating the mana and things like that. Well, this game, you can, especially if you're fighting an Angron or even with Kurz, you can get done a game before energy turn 10. And it's not even, and when you're not used to that, and you're like, wait a minute, this has been 3 minutes, what the it took me a little while to get used to that, because I'm so used to it that you need to do more methodical, or more like use the card when you're, when it's necessary to use it. So like an example would be the one card where you do 5 damage to front line. If you don't do it to a front line enemy, it does 2 damage. And it took me forever to just realize that sometimes 2 damage is better than holding on to that card, keeping the space in your deck, and waiting for a front line, because sometimes you're not going to see front line, so it just took up space the whole time. And it's that realization of more, I guess, keeping on curve, I think is the way that you would put it, than always trying to maximize what your cards can do. Not to say that you don't try to, but like if you're in a situation, sometimes it's just getting things off the board. So just my quick thoughts with it. And I mean, I do enjoy the game. I definitely did not anticipate a card game, especially in a electronic environment, to have so much strategy associated with it. I guess would be the way I put it. Like, I just figured you put a person down, and like you said, it's a Space Marine. I'm going to win.
Right.
I put down Horse. I win because he's the War Master. He's going to win. And it's like, wait a minute. In fact, you're sitting there and you're like, okay, you actually have to think about this a little bit, especially when you deal with certain, counters and things like that, or stun or can attack. It makes it a very dynamic game that I didn't anticipate, and that's kept me playing as well.
Cool. Yeah. There are a lot of layers to it, and that's just, this, as far as digital card games go, and I've tried to play digital card games before, and up until I never played Hearthstone. I know that's the one that a lot of people compare this to, or Dragon Lords, which is the predecessor from Everguild. But early on, the technology and the programs that went into the apps, whether it was on like a cheap freebie Facebook game or on older Android platform games, the only strategy was like what cards you put in your deck, and that was it. The game would play it automatically. Like, I play games where like it was basically like, okay, it would flip a card, and then that would be your first card played, and then it would flip another card, and whatever survived like, it was just a matter of like what got played by the AI, and not anything by, okay, if I play this card first and I take out their card, I can hold on to this card, I can build a deck, I can combo things. Like, this game brings that whole experience that you would get from a standard card game into the digital environment, which is really nice. So it is, for me, it's definitely the first where you get the full experience. I think the only things that are missing or different with this being a digital game is a lot of the random factors, the random generation cards, Jubok, Kaizelane, a lot of the random damage stuff, that you could still have random things happen in games, like a coin flip or choose a card randomly, but those would happen at a much lower scale, whereas with the digital environment, it's just easier for them to program. And then I think we don't have things like, we don't have a visible graveyard, we don't have looking at the top card of your deck. We have tutoring cards, we have cards like Command Bridge, but I think at some point part of that is a developer choice too, to just avoid those, because they open up a whole realm of playstyle too. Right.
No, makes total sense. And I guess to piggyback on what you said, I like the fact that you can have random stats with things. So like when you do defense satellites, it's 1 to 4. And so it's not always a guarantee it's going to be this. And I think like a digital game does have, I think, an easier advantage over the physical card game. And like I said, I can't really talk with experience too much with that, but just it's easier to like implement a Jubok card where you can just take a card from a person instead of you. And I think I've heard you say it on another podcast, you don't have to have a physical copy of that card for you to then use if you acquired it. The computer just basically promulgates it and says you have a copy of this now.
Exactly. Yeah.
So and it makes for I think it makes for a much more dynamic game in that sense. So the other thing for me is that it's mobile, and I know for me the fact that it's on my phone makes life a whole lot easier. Just candidly speaking,
it does. You can whip it out and whip out the phone and play the game pretty much anywhere. And we've talked about storage. I know Axel, we talked about actually storing a card game, and I don't have to worry about that. It's all on my phone. I don't have to worry about a box full of cards. That's pretty awesome.
Right.
So your main army in 40K on the tabletop is orcs. Yes. You said you like to kit bash, or you just like to build them, or do you do the conversion stuff?
So I will. Okay, so this is where this gets fun. The reason I play orcs is because when I first started, I sucked at painting. I don't know how else to put it. And so with orcs, you can basically get away with anything you want. So what I do is basically, if I've had an idea for something, I just put it together. So most of my orcs are the traditional orcs that you get out of the boxes and things like that. But then for my warlords, I'll take stuff and kit bash them, as you say.
Bits on bits.
And so my warlord, his name actually comes from, and this is data made game, it comes from the online game Warhammer Age of Reckoning from 2008, an MMO that they tried to compete with World of Warcraft. I took my name or I made a name in that game, and then I decided to turn him into the 40k version. So I kit bashed him with Sentinel legs from the Imperial Guard, or at least that's what they used to be called. Gave him like mechanical arms, and basically the idea was that he's kind of like the Terminator that can't die, and so he keeps coming back. So he's got like electricity on his back. He's got the Sentinel legs, that kind of stuff. That's my Warlord. I have a Baneblade that I bought off of eBay. That's one of those things where people don't want them. It's like $20 or whatever. It's been a long time, but like they, wanted to get rid of it. So I bought it. I basically threw on orc tracks and orc symbols and all that stuff. And now it's orky. I have and I can take pictures of this too, but I have, I guess they're called a Valkyrie. They're the things. I bought one of those years ago. And I didn't touch it and I mean years ago, I mean like 2010, 2011. I then converted it over the winter where now it's all orky, so it's all rusted, it's all grimy, it's got guns and ladders, and it's just basically the thing I love about the orcs is you just throw it on there and it works. Like there's no like prim and proper with like even with the chaos space marines, there's some sort of order to it. It works. You just do whatever you want. Yeah. So I love that it's very freeing, and then also at the same time, just on the field, if orcs die, you're just like, okay, that's fine. Let me get out my bucket of dice, and go, because
that is true.
The purposes, that's what they do.
Yeah, yep. I had when I first started playing, I had one of the guys that I played with was the orc player. Like everybody else was like chaos or the Necrons or Space Wolves, like everybody else and then he had the orc player, and that was he spent the majority of the time building his stuff. Like that was his whole thing, was like, hey, I just picked it, like you said, like he picked up a Baneblade, or somebody sold like a Basilisk to him for like $10, and he's like, all right, I'm gonna take and slap on like 30 different orc bits and covered in grots, and here we go, it's a looted Basilisk. And exactly, it just makes it his own. He did everything he did was all orky. And I remember like the one game he had a speed freak army, and he had a bunch of like the old wagons and the trikes or whatever it was, and he just drove up and down the board, and like through the course of the game, like all the wagons, they get blown up or obliterated, and by the end of the game the entire board's just littered with these like broken trikes. And he did what he wanted to do. Like that was all. He's just causing chaos and driving around and shooting things. But that was fun to him. And half of that really was for him. The hobby was just like, I want to make this trike look different than the next one, because none of them should look the same. They're all cobbled together in all sorts of ways. Right. No, I completely empathize. I can say that word correctly. For me, especially where I am now, just where I am personally, I haven't played a 40k game in a very long time. So for me, the hobby is now just basically making the models and making them the way that I always envisioned them to be. So the fact that you can sit there and you go, all right, I'm going to just build this the way I wanted to. And so like I'll get a model for like an orc, and I'll just say, let's go. And it's like, okay, this is what I envision. This is what we're going to do. And there's no rules with it. Like I said, unlike the Space Marines and the other armies that have all this, rules that say what you have to do, what you can't do, it doesn't matter with the orcs. And then I completely agree with the philosophy of just you put them on the board and you let them do what they do. I played back in the day where the orc knob bikers were the bane of everyone's existence because of the way the rules were written. And so I would just have them run up and down the field. And people would get so mad at me, and then they'd eventually die. And then they'd be like, "Why are you upset? Why aren't you upset?" I'm like, "Because that's what orcs are supposed to do." That's it. I played the fluff. That's what they did.
That's all they did, and they just go faster. The only requirement is they have to be red if you're speed freaks, because they go faster. They get that 1 inch.
Yeah, it makes a big difference, that 1 inch.
Yes, it does.
I liked there was a couple years ago when they did the Orktober. Where they brought out the newer models for the trikes and the bandwagons. I was really hoping they'd do a few more of those, but those look pretty cool. They had the whole Fury Road thing going on with them.
Yes.
I think out of all the orcs, like the Speed Freak thing for me, like, did you ever play Gorka Morka?
No, I did not. I heard of it, but I never played it.
It's very cool.
It is. It is an old specialist game. Like it was out of print when I started playing. in 3rd edition. And it's, I don't even know if it was a boxed game or if it was just rules. I don't know. My friends had the rules for it. And the entire thing is everybody is orcs. And everybody is basically road warriors. Like, that's what you're doing. And you have a band. And you can build your band in different ways. You get teeth to buy new boys. You know, you can do a group where you have just one battle wagon and you load it up with a whole bunch of boys and their job is to jump onto other wagons and, you know, attack. Or you can do a gang where everybody's on bikes and you're a biker gang. You know, you can have chains, you can have a squig on a chain, and like that was the whole thing. And kind of in the way that Mordheim or Necromunda, you level up your gang and they can get different things. You can do the same thing for your band, but you can also juice up your juice it. You can juice up your vehicles and stuff, and that was the coolest thing. Like, we played one game, like, because we were going to do a league, and then I'm trying to remember, like, something came up, like some other game or session came up that totally sidelined that and took everybody's interest away. But we played one game with it all, and that was like, it was just madness. It was orc on orc fun. And I heard
orc on orc violence.
It was, yeah. What orc on orc violence is orc on orc fun, right?
Exactly.
That's exactly what it is.
It's one and the same. I heard they were going to do a game for that, like a PC game. I don't know if that was just rumors or not, but that would have been one that I think really could have like fit a particular, you know, need that people didn't realize that they had, was the need to have this happen. I think the closest thing we got was that. Was it Fly Boys or Burna Boys? What's the name of the...
a DACA Squadron?
DACA Squadron, yeah.
That's what it is.
Which is an amazing name for it.
It is. It is. And that is cool. Like, I watched somebody play that, and I saw Valrak did the Chapter Master Valrak on his YouTube channel, did the demo for that. That looks fun.
Oh, yeah.
I will have to go check that out.
It is.
That sounds like a lot of fun.
Yeah, it is a first-person, you're flying orc jets and planes and bombers.
Do you know the Rogue Squadron that came out not long ago, the Star Wars one?
Yes.
It's that, but orcs.
Okay, I might have to go check this
like,
out. That sounds awesome.
I'm sold.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's really cool.
Like, to put it to away for like the reason, like the things I love about the orcs. If you ever played the old Dawn of War games, I would play the orcs just for the quotes that they would say.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, they were hilarious.
Just exactly. So yeah. The other army that I like is, and I mentioned it before, is I love the Night Lords.
Yeah,
I have a whole Night Lords army. I got hooked by Aaron Dembski-Bowden when he wrote the Soul Hunter trilogy with Talos and them, and I just got sucked in. And that's actually, to a certain reason, I got into Legions, because like I mentioned, I like the 40k lore, but I always, when there was a game that said I could play as Conrad Kurz, that hooked me too. So when I didn't get him now because I got him in October when he came out for Halloween. I made the decision that if he was going to be there, I will splurge to get it, because I've never been lucky enough in all the crates I've ever opened to get him. And yeah, so love that lore as well. I have a whole army where I hit bash them, but nowhere near like orcs. So I'm not a good, like a good guy, Space Marine army guy.
That's
not
okay.
my shtick.
I mean, half the time you gotta have some guys playing the bad stuff. I like the fact that the Night Lords, I mean, personally, if I had to play Chaos, I couldn't. I just couldn't do it. I've had this discussion with myself for years. Like, if I had to play Chaos, what would it be? And every time I just come back to, like, I couldn't do it. Like, I'll just quit the game. No, I wouldn't quit the game. I couldn't do Khorne. I don't like Nurgle or Slanesh or Zeech. Like, I like the Undivided, chapters more. There's just something. They're just, like, whether it's Word Bearers, whether it's Alpha Legion, who at the time is still, are they undivided, are they loyalist, whatever, it doesn't matter. They're not devoted. Right. Night Lords, Iron Warriors. Am I missing one? I feel like that's all of them. There's 4 and 4, right?
There's 4 and 5.
5, because you have Sons of Horus.
Oh, Sons of Horus. Yeah. That's right.
Which are technically undivided.
Yeah.
Right. They're undivided. Yep.
They have worshippers of every kind.
Yeah. Yeah, so I don't know. I like those guys more, though, than I like the devotees. And I like the fact that, they even though they're all undivided, they all have their own flavor. Like, they're not, if you do an Iron Warriors army, you're doing, I don't know if they still have obliterators, but they've got Hellbrutes, they've got
Oh,
Defilers.
they still have
Yeah.
a
Do they? Okay.
Oh yeah, they do.
And then if
Perturabo was a giant one.
oh,
Yeah.
Likely. People don't know what he looks like. but
Night
well.
Lords, you've got
Right.
Raptors. You know, if you're doing Word Bearers,
Yes.
you're pulling in that demon concept as well as probably some possessed, maybe possessed heavy in the Black Legion. So yeah, there's nothing wrong with having chaos. I couldn't bring myself to do it.
I love chaos. Demons are pretty cool.
Yes. Let's just say I like the chaos. I also say it this way for myself. I also, when I got into the hobby, it was right at the end of 3rd edition, and everything was Ultramarines. Everything. And it was just, if you wanted to play Space Marines, it was Ultramarines. There was no, like, there was, stuff about the Dark Angels and Blood Angels, but like, at least from what I remember, and this is just my perspective, there wasn't a lot on the other Loyalist legions, like nothing compared to the Ultramarines. And I think what kind of did the nail in the coffin for me was 5th edition, when the Ultramarine Codex came out. It was sold as Space Marines, but it was the Ultramarines.
Yeah.
And it was just like, okay, I can't do this anymore. Like, I'll be honest with you, until I got into the books, the 30K edition, the Horus Heresy, series, I didn't know anything about Jagatai Khan or the White Scars. I just knew they rode bikes.
Right.
Like, that's as far as I got, because they weren't on any merchandise. They weren't on any pick. It was just, all right, go be an Ultramarine, or, as the vernacular that I always called them were Smurfs. And, just go. That's what you want to play. You don't want to be anybody else. And I will say, over at least the last couple of years, they started to expand all that so that you could at least feel like, oh, okay, I can play a White Scars army, and they have special rules on how to do that. And that helps a lot to flesh it out. But I guess just when I was basically hardcore into 40K, like when I first got into it, it was only Gulamon, and I probably am butchering his name, so I apologize, but it was only him. It was only the Ultramarines, and I couldn't stand them. And I was like, I'm going bad guys. Who attacks these guys? And it was, at the time, it was Aaron Dembski-Bowden's book with Soul Hunter, and I was like, all right, let's see what they do. So then it just kind of unraveled from there. So I'm sorry. Like, I'll be honest with you, I didn't even know much about the Imperial Fists either, except for the Soul Drinkers. But I don't know if they're
that doesn't count.
Fists.
No,
they don't. I don't think they're part of it.
They're not Imperial Fists. They
right.
Yeah. Let's not talk about that book.
Yeah, let's never mention them again.
Ben Counter is on my shit list. Ben Counter is one of those authors from Black Library that I just cannot stand. And Soul Drinkers was his first series, I believe. They're supposedly not second founding. They're a Secundus chapter at some degree of the Imperial Fist, supposedly. But yeah, the stuff that happens to them and their whole story arc, like that, it's appalling to me. It's appalling to me that they just like kept that in as canon. I think at some point they wiped them out, or they've tried to scrub the lore from them. But Ben Counter keeps trying to squeeze him in somewhere. It's like, get this guy out of my chapter.
This is where, and this is what I'd put it with that, and then I'll stop going down the lore faction, or the lore ways. But when I think about the Imperial Fists, and without a doubt, they're stoic. They're the defenders on the wall, that type of thing. And then I never knew the Imperial Fists before reading the Soul Drinkers. So like that was my first introduction to an Imperial Fist Legion, and then in the series you get to Lysander and co. Right. And I'm like, how did these? Wait a minute. Something's not like the other, if that makes sense. And so I completely agree with you. I'm like, this, like, the way that you did this was, and I'm going to say it this way, a little dirty to the Imperial Fist, because the Imperial Fist would have wiped these guys out. Yeah. Like, if that makes sense. They would have been like, they would have pulled a Dark Angels to them, and said, you're gone. See you later.
Like,
where's this?
You don't even have to think about that. Yeah, exactly.
Where's this heresy? It's gone. And it's like, so like after I'm reading it, and I'm like, then I look up the Imperial Fists, and I'm like, they let that happen? And like, they were cool with this? Wait a minute, So, but say Levy, I'll stop talking.
Yeah. No, I think the Imperial Fists, like my first entry to them was, my first entry in general to 40K was the Codex Space Marines for 3rd edition, which was... that was the last one that the Crimson Fists were on the cover on. The Crimson Fists were my first army, because I was like, I like the color scheme. It doesn't look too bright or gaudy. I can go with that. I like a red fist. Okay, that's cool. That's kind of dynamic. I want to know more about these guys. And the only thing in there was about Captain Cortez, which is, I'm still waiting for him to cross the Rubicon and become a Primaris, because that is an awesome character.
Yes.
And then there was the veteran Sergeant Lysander. At the time, he was just a sergeant, and he had the bolter fire drill. And I was like, so we've got a cool-ass captain special character for the second founding chapter, and the main character for the primary chapter is just this guy who has bolter drill for a squad that he's in. Not even for the whole army, like just the squad that he was in. This is 3rd edition, so they were like really underpowered at the time. And then the Codex Astartes came out, and it was a combination of articles that they had pulled from White Dwarf, and they actually made into 3 volumes, and that fleshed out the legions, the founding legions, in such a way. This is before they were doing the Horus Heresy story, and they had sections where what they were prior to the heresy, what they were during, like during the Great Crusade, what they were during the heresy, and what they were after the heresy. And I read that for everybody, and there's some great stories in there, but the Fist I was intrigued about, because it's like, oh, this is my chance to finally learn about them. And I was disappointed that they didn't do a whole lot during the heresy, but their whole arc was defending Terra. And reading into that and reading how, just the defense and everything that they do, like, that captivated me really, because it was like, that's like, there was 3 legions that did that, like, against all the traitor legions. Like, 3 legions stood the walls of Terra: the Blood Angels, the White Scars, and the Imperial Fists. And if it wasn't for them, everything would have fallen. And like, just some of the old school artwork in those books with the fists, like just battling in the halls of the palace and everything. Just like, all right, I'm definitely on board with this being my faction. But you had to go through several books to get to that, because like you said, like, if you just picked up 4th edition Codex, which was kind of the onset of what some will call
The Matt Ward era.
This is an obscenity! And you'll never let me forget that.
Or I don't know.
The Matt Ward.
Yeah.
The Matt Ward.
Yeah, exactly. Like that would be all you knew, was like, oh, these Ultramarines, that's what they are, right? Space Marines are Ultramarines. Like, no, there's other things. There's other legions that have a totally different, like, organization style and the way they fight and stratagems and history. You wouldn't get any of that out of that codex, and you have to go into these other books. So you really have to dive into the lore. Just like, you had to go and look and find out who are the bad guys, and you have to pick up a book, and there's a lot of bad guys out there, and it's really interesting.
It's going to hurt your feelings a lot of stuff. When I first got in the 40K, my mind, when I heard Space Marines, I assumed they were all blue.
Right.
Yeah.
No, I agree with you.
They were pushed that hard. I was just like, oh, Space Marines, the blue ones.
It was
right.
And my body almost slapped.
Yeah. This is even before, because we had the internet, but I just didn't dive into the internet very hard. And when I picked up the 4th edition Codex, because I was going to do it anyways, because it's like I'm playing the game heavy, I was like, okay, Ultramarine special character, Ultramarine special character, Ultramarine, and all of their special characters had like a full page spread. And then the only special characters for the other factions were like their captain, and it was like a half a paragraph. You're like, what? I feel like they made a choice here.
Right. I would, when I did the Night Lords, I would take the heroes. Like, there was the guy, I forget his name, Cato Scarius or something along those lines.
Cato Sicarius. Yeah.
Yes, him. I took him and turned him into a Night Lord just because I wanted to go against, like what you said, with like every other chapter or everything had like a half a page, but then the Ultramarines, each hero or legendary character had a page. I just took that model and was like, all right, he's a Night Lord. I'm going to make it like they stole his armor or something. And I'm like, just because I was like, I can't, the Ultramarines, I'm not a fanboy of the Ultramarines.
No. I know there are fanboys out there, but I think there's very valid reasons to dislike them. For me, they weren't like, they took a lot of shine off of the other factions, but for me, they were just kind of always bland. And at the time when I started the hobby, their color scheme wasn't the gold. It was like yellow, like yellow paint. So I didn't like that. It was I thought it was a smart move for them to go with the gold over the yellow, but at that point, my perception was still already set in stone.
Nope, makes sense to me.
Yeah. Well, talking on the Ultramarines, there's no Ultramarines in the balance patch. That's the best segue I've got for this. We're going to talk about the balance patch today. I don't know if I mentioned that at the start of the episode.
I don't think you did.
No.
I don't think you did.
We are talking the balance patch today. Came out on yesterday, the 9th.
Yes.
Yep. We're going to talk about that a little bit, but before we get to the balance patch, we do have Night Lords in the new event, which is it's kind of a flashback event in the fact that the other events that have already happened, I think, have kind of covered this or have covered time period after this already. I could be wrong, but I feel like we've had some events where the Dark Angels have already kind of progressed past to Tsagalusa. I don't know how do you pronounce that. The duel at Tsagalusa, and that's where the Dark that's where the Dark Angels and the Night Lords kind of have a meeting that turns pretty much into the kicks off the Thramas Crusade, where the Dark Angels, where the Dark Angels hunt down the Night Lords. We've got 2 cards here for options here. We've got the Traitor's Demise, which is if the Loyalist win, that is 2 energy. Gives can't attack to an enemy troop until your next turn and you draw a card. And then the Chaos Victory is 4 energy, subjugation. Deal damage to a troop equal to the number of cards in your hand. I think both of those are really good cards.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Though the Loyalist one we almost already have.
Right.
What's its name? It's related to Callus, Underground War?
Yeah, it was going to be Underground War. Underground War was the card that we won, and that raises the cost of attacks. If the other card had won that event instead of Underground War, it would have been a card that gives can't attack to an enemy unit.
I could have sworn we have a can't attack card right now. I just can't remember its name.
Did we?
It's a Loyalist card. Well, I say Loyalist. It's an Imperium.
It's an Imperial Army card. I know the one that you're talking about. I saw somebody at least.
It's 3 energy, I think.
It was, but that's not what we got. I think that was the image for the possible card that it could have been. Yeah.
I need to check because I'm pretty sure it's in the card thing. I'm in a match right now because I like to play this game while we talk it to get a feel of particularly the balance patches.
No, there's Underworld War. But it's not there in the 3 energy.
I'm going to check here in a second.
Check it.
I could have sworn that this card.
But I think either of those are good cards. I don't know which one. It's still early on to figure out what we're going to get. I played the Dark Angels. It's a tight game because I think the Dark Angels have got good cards, but so do the Night Lords. And if the Night Lords can get 2 or 3 copies of Nostromo, or there's drafted copies of Apotheosis out there, and if you can get Mercy and Forgiveness and Apotheosis on your Kurz, in an event, that's pretty nasty. So, yeah, I think it's kind of even Steven. It's a fair match from what I've seen so far, and I don't have a preference on either of those cards. If I had to choose, I would prefer to see the Chaos one in the game. That's just me. What about you guys?
Yeah, the Chaos one looks like it'll be fun in the long run, especially as it could be a tiny hard removal, depending on how you use it.
Mm-hmm.
Right. That's what I was thinking.
Yeah, I'm not too big of a fan on that. Well, Traitor's Demise, at least the biggest benefit, especially at its cost, is it has a draw. I really like that about it.
Right.
Yes, I agree as well. It's got a draw, and can attack is something that you just can't get off of somebody or some troop.
Yeah, you can jam it, but then if it's a buff troop, you lose all your buffs in the process.
Right. Yep.
Right.
Yeah, they both have uses, and I like the fact not just this event or not just this award, but the award for I think the last 2 events have really provided a few cards that can offer people some options to deal with the play style that has evolved with cards like Desperate Defense, where people just drop out some big fat troops. And if you've got stuff like Orbital Bombardment or whatever, Orbital Assault or whatever it is, where you're dealing 3 damage for every tactic in your hand, discard all your tactics, or you're dealing, if you got 5 cards in your hand, you can deal 5 damage to that Doombringer. I like that. It's not great, but it's an option. So those have been added to the game or as possibilities. It's still too early to really see which way we're going to go on that. And then other than that, The only big news that we've got coming up here, besides the patch, before we talk about that, is the developer Q&A that is going to take place on Monday. That's in 2 days. So by the time you listen to this podcast, the Q&A will already have taken place. So we will be covering the Q&A in our next episode, as well as I think we were going to talk about the Iron Warriors. So we'll probably do both with Karmatos. We're going to try to squeeze in both of those things. That could be ambitious. I don't know. We'll see. But
we'll probably be able to do it.
Yeah, we can do it.
I believe in us.
I'm glad
I have faith in you,
does.
Scott.
The power of chaos will prevail.
The power of chaos compels you. Yeah, so we've got that, and the Q&A is Monday, and I'm 99% sure that they will be announcing the release date for the next expansion, which will contain the Imperial Fist. So there'll be more to cover and talk about when it comes to that next week, but that is just up and coming. So hopefully everybody who had questions at the Q&A, by the time you hear this, those questions got answered, or you at least walked away with it feeling like it was a good reason to have a Q&A. Most of the time, the Q&As, they can't answer every question. I think some stuff they can or can't say, or they just don't have an answer that's going to make everybody happy. But generally, they have some sort of information that they give that is interesting at the very least, or you're like, okay, I've got ready for some things to come. Now, there have been a couple Q&As where I've read through their answers as well as like the lack of anything that they provide, and it felt like I don't know why they had this Q&A to begin with. Like they didn't give us anything. Like they didn't tease anything. They didn't spoil anything. They didn't even say like, hey, this is what we're working on. They literally just let people ask questions that they didn't answer. That doesn't happen too often, but it has happened. I don't think that's going to be the case this time around. I think we're going to get an expansion date. We're probably going to get some spoilers. When I say spoilers, I mean like maybe they'll tease like an image, and then maybe they'll talk about like what cards they're looking at to patch before that expansion releases. I don't know. We'll see.
Do you think they'll announce the other factions that'll be released at the same time?
That's hard. They will announce. They'll confirm the sisters, which they kind of already did.
Okay.
I don't know if they will announce the third faction, because their history with announcing the third factions, typically they play coy. They like to like, oh, you'll see.
Gotcha.
So yeah, they may, but I don't know if they will. I wouldn't be surprised if they don't. And then we just get it teased in some other way, shape, or form, like whether that is an image, like a card back image or something, or some other tease, like that's possible. Because what they did, I remember for the Custodes, because everybody was like really confident that we were going to get Custodes as the third faction, which was the first faction that was not a Space Marine faction. For Prospero, I was like, that really? Are you sure? And then they had a reveal, like it was a video from somebody at the Warhammer World, and they were standing in front of the banner, and it was like, I think it was Amon Tarmakian was the picture of him, and like, that's who it is. It's the Custodes, and so that was cool, but at the same time, it kind of felt like at Prospero, who else would it be? You got the Thousand Suns, you got the Space Wolves, like who else could it be?
It was really their only option.
Yeah, but with Terra, with the Siege of Terra or whatever they're going to call this expansion, they could still be quite a lot. It could be the Collegia Titanica, which we talked about in the last episode. I really think that was actually somebody's April Fool's joke. It could be the Knights Errant. It could be Agents of Malcador. It could be like some other, like not necessarily new, like another unaligned faction. There's not too many of those. I don't think we're going to get any Xenos factions, but that's really where we're going to get. So what could it be? Could it be some sort of offshoot of the chaos? Could it be Zinch, who really wasn't there, but could it be some branch of chaos? I don't know what you would call them, like the traitor legions, like who have fallen the most. Like, would it be Typhus and
Gotcha.
The Emperor's Children, who have just like totally devolved beyond what their legion structure would be? I don't know. I'm curious to see.
They're scraping the bottom of the barrel when it comes to because a lot of these armies are pre-existing on the tabletop, obviously.
Yes.
Right.
They're running out.
Yeah.
Right.
I think my money is on if I had to say that the last the Titans are a joke, which let's hope that's the case. I would prefer to see.
Everyone's praying for that.
I have always wanted to see Knights Errant, and that would give, because that is or Agents of Malkador. It would give you the option to have Malkador as a warlord, which would be very cool. And they had a very shadowy role to play, but at the same time a very powerful role. Like, if you could imagine a combination of a faction like Custodes and Orphans of War, or something like that, like in that regard, that could be really cool. So, I don't know. We shall see.
Yeah. Sounds good.
So let's talk this patch. Let's go through everything here. So we had, it's not a huge patch. We had 8 cards affected. So the Imperial Army, we got Malkador's Observer, which had its cost reduced to 4, which cost 5. That's it. Triumph of Olenor, which had the description changed for that its cost is now when a troop dies, as opposed to when an enemy troop dies. Close Call, which returns a friendly troop to your hand instead of your deck. So that's a significant change to what the card does.
Yeah, that was enough where if you have like a flanker that survived or a fast troop, you can save it for later.
And actually have it to rely upon. Exactly.
Yeah. Instead of just tossing it away and praying.
Compliance gains the draw troop card. So after it reduces the cost of the Imperial Army troops in your deck, you actually get to draw a troop. You had, for the Sons of Horus, you had Surgar Targost, who has a change description to Relentless. Give a Mark of Chaos to your Astartes troops, which is a significant improvement from what he was before, which before that cost 2 energy for him to use that. And then the Punisher had its health increased to 12, had its ability... his ability used to cost 4 to deal 10. Now it costs 2 to deal 10. Eschaton Imperative, which was for the Dark Angels, has its description changed from deal 2 damage, which still does the same damage to all enemies, and then for each unit killed, lower the cost of a troop in your hand by 1. And Mechanicum, which is Hera Technica, has been completely changed from anything that it did before, and now it is a 3-cost card, and it gives a Mark of Chaos to all of your Mechanicum non-demon troops. Draw a card. So, not a patch that overall from the last 24 hours of reading on, actually I should say 48, because this was like up Friday morning. When I woke up yesterday, I was like, what? I saw the news. It was like Imperial Army cards updated. I was like, oh, Desperate Defense. And I go to it. Yeah.
We had hope.
And then I went to it and I was like, oh, it's nowhere near Desperate Defense.
Right.
Yeah. So, I mean, overall, I think the only card on here that was on anybody's wish list was Eschaton Imperative. And the rest of them, I mean, I don't know. They're all over the place. Let's talk about it. So, what are your
Some
thoughts?
of them, not so much.
Yeah.
All right, I'm going to just go quickly over the Imperial Army. You probably still won't see Malkador's Observer actually used. This was a nice change. It was something where you might see it thought about, but I still won't see it put in anyone's decks. I'm betting on that. Triumphs of Ultramar is another case of it costs too much. Because that's under the assumption that I'm going to keep it in my hand the entire game. I'm going to do this cool play towards the end. And I'm going to buff my entire board for exactly 6 damage wider of lethal.
Yeah. That's if you have a full board.
That's if your entire board is tokens. I now have slightly more lethal. It's not going to cut it.
Right.
Close Call, returning it to your hand instead of deck. I can actually see this being used now.
Yeah.
You could use a Vorex, clear out some things. It still has 1 HP. Return it, drop it again, and clear it again on 10 energy. Boom. It's theoretically if everyone has 1 HP on their board, or 1 damage on their board. So maybe on a Conrad Kurz, who is what's his name? Kurz is chosen, right? There's some actual things you can do with those, which is nice. I didn't see that coming. And then Compliance is draw a troop. I mean, that's the one that reduces cost of all troops, by 1?
Yes.
Oh, so you'll draw a troop so you can at least use it quickly. So that's nice. Sons of Horus. Let's see. The Punisher won't be used. I refuse to hear otherwise. This does not. The only way you'll ever see it used if it has Ward. but I don't want a world where that thing has ward.
Yeah.
And then Sergusk, I mean, not Sergus. His name's Sergar Targost. Some people are seeing this as a buff. Some people are seeing this as a nerf. I'm pretty neutral on it. Like, it's not a bad change, but I also didn't see it coming.
Mm-hmm.
I don't see this as a nerf.
No, it's definitely not a nerf, but I like being able to drop my troops that turn and then giving them their stacks. Having to do it in a different order is going to be a bit weird.
True. I mean, and I don't mean to interrupt you, but
yeah, go ahead. With
this patch, I feel like it's, Sergar Targos patch and then everything else. And the reason why is that this is, like, to me, because of the 5 energy, because you can drop him on turn 2, 3, 4, like turn 4, or if you go second, turn 3, right? You can drop him, and most likely he's surviving. And I've never seen anyone use his energy beforehand. So I was play testing it before we got on here. And for all intents and purposes, he comes out and you can almost be guaranteed he's getting a Mark of Chaos. Mm-hmm. Now, but if it was the old Mark of Chaos, that might be a different story. But the new Marks of Chaos are pretty rad. And so for me, overall, while it's one of those things that it doesn't sound like a big deal, but like if you get him, and let's say you get the one, I think it's Slanesh, where he gets Fear. Thank you. Terror. That's the word. And you get it where he can just start clearing the board, where they have to throw troops into it. Each turn he keeps getting a buff until they get to their energy where they can do the insta kill on it. And I honestly think, at least this is just me. Now remember, I'm not a super card player person, but like that card with that change, I think that changes him from just being one of like like a mandatory card for Sons of Horus of like, you need him in your deck. Because I think for him, he is an immediate, you've got to take him off the board. Mm-hmm. And the catch is you can't just take him off. Most cards at energy turn 5, you might be dropping it late, so it might be turn 6. They don't have an insta-kill. So you're dealing with trying to get him off the board, and you have to do 9 damage because you have to do 2 to get rid of the drop pod, and then an additional 7. I think if he didn't have drop pod, I think that would have been a nerf, because then you could get rid of him easier. But just because of the drop pod and the fact that you're going to get a mark if he's dropped, unless they already have board presence, let's just assume they don't at that early. Like, I think that puts him into, like, if he wasn't already in A tier or S tier, if you want to do the tiers, that puts him very close to one of the best cards in the game. It just, I think to me, it basically, it puts him above Malagurst. I think it puts it in the same territory as the Vengeful Spirit. If you're running Sons of Horus, you need him and you need Vengeful Spirit. But the thing is that I think and I put it before, I don't even know why they made the change. Like, I'm just sitting there going, I'm not super active in the community, I'll be honest, but like, out of everything that I've ever seen, I don't think there was a clamoring that says we need to change Sergar Targost to be more potent. Yeah. If that makes sense. I just don't see it. Just like all the other cards. I think you're absolutely right, Axel, with the Punisher. I still don't, unless you're doing Desperate Defense, you're not seeing the Punisher on the field. I just, and this is like, and I go back to what I talked about before, like, it seems like an hour ago now, maybe. He's just too slow, because you can't, if like Sergar Targos, because he's dropped turn like 4, you can have that time to build the board presence where things can't get rid of it. But with the Punisher, that late in the game, you have the insta-kill abilities. The only way that I could see him being put on the board is that instead of him getting those changes, he would have been given frontline, like the Death Guard, the Death Guard Epic card. I forget what it is. But the one that's like, energy turn 10, but it's frontline 412 and poisons the field. I'm not saying I want those stats there, but like, it would need something like that where it's like, okay, this stops the enemy. Because as of this point, all this does is, once again, you get a turn to figure out what to deal with it. And usually that'll just be the insta-kill, or if you're facing another enemy, we'll figure out what to deal with it. I just, once again, though, I'm just laughing because I'm like, I don't know why they made these changes. Like, those two at least. Now, I will say for the Dark Angels, that was a needed nerf. That was an absolutely needed nerf.
I like this, but at the same time, I would have preferred if they nerfed Operator Dekur more, because this hurts the entire Legion, not just Corswain, which I believe needs to be taken out back.
I agree. I just think beforehand, I mean, I know there was the event. I think I've never played Dark Angels until the event about, I think it was 2 times ago, and it was the one I forget the name of the event, so I apologize.
Was it
but
the
it was
raid event?
It was, I believe,
Oh,
and it was just
so awesome.
And you get
a
card, and you could get like 3 copies of that. And
Yeah.
like I said, I never played Dark Angels, and I threw it down, and I'm like, wait a minute. And then you start looking down, and all your troops just dropped, and then you put it on top of Israfel, I think is his name, the one that you can spend the energy. And I'm like, this is broken. Like, I'm sitting here, I'm like, I'm going to use it, but this, I could see why that needed a nerf. But I do agree with you, Axel. It's just, it seems to affect everybody, and they do need to look at how to modify Coursewayne. But I don't know how you do that, but I agree. So it's just that needed to be, addressed. I think for me, the overall thought that I had with the patch is not just the fact that they made the patch on things that we're sitting here going, why did they make some of these changes? I figured the patch that has to be coming is with the Knights. I know I took a break for over a week from the game because every time I was in ladder, it was either Angron, Desperate Defense, or Knights, and I needed a break. So I'm hoping that they look into Desperate Defense or the Knights. I mean, Angron, it's Angron. But like, I'm sitting there and I'm like, every time they touch the Knights, I sit there, and then you play once or twice and you're like, I don't know if this is good enough. And then the other half is that, once again, Desperate Defense, you can build a deck, and like I said, it got to the point that I would see, 5 people in a row would be either Sartovats or Fulgrim or Vulcan or somebody in that nature just building Desperate Defense. Yeah. And it's like, I want to see something else, if that makes sense. And I know it works, but I just want to see something else.
Well, and the problem with Desperate Defense is it's not...
One of many.
Well, there's a lot of problems, but I mean, the problem with it is not... It's a card. It shouldn't be the same deck. And it is the same deck, you just do it differently with 3 or 4 different warlords. Everybody's got a different way to do it. Tarvitz can do it sooner. He's playing all the rest of the cards the same except for Tactical Brilliance. Vulcan can do it a little bit later, but he's playing all the same cards except he's got his long game. He's got his Reckoning. Cypher can do it sooner a little bit because he can tutor the cards and with his ability. You could do Desperate Defense in just about any deck, and it's like, out of the 30 cards, probably 25 of them are the same, and the warlord is different. And that's not it's not creative. It's really who gets it first, who gets to play this card first. And the game, any game or card game especially, should not be about who played the one card first to win. We have finishers. We have Vengeful Spirit. We have Pride of the Emperor. We have Macragg's Honor. Those cards exist as one-ofs, and they're direct, and they do it. And if you get within that lethal range is a term that exists because it covers those cards, it covers troops on the board, it covers combo possibilities. But Desperate Defense just puts you just put power cards out. That's all it is. And I love power cards, but there's no strategy to it other than like, how can I put it out faster? And that doesn't lend to anything. It doesn't lend to any originality. It would be different if it picked X amount of cards or cost cards of 7 or less, or vehicles or whatever it was. Like, that would scale it down some. I'm sure at some point they're going to change it. They've mentioned that it's on the radar. I was just surprised that it wasn't included in this patch. The patch overall, like, if I had to rank it, I'm not going to rank it just yet because I want to talk a little bit about it for my thoughts here, and then we can get everybody's rank and kind of see where we come at. There are some good stuff. Yeah, like you said, Malkador's Observer, Triumph of Eleanor, those are not great cards to begin with. And Triumph of Eleanor, like, it gives a +1/+1. Okay. Like, there are so many better ways and cheaper ways to get a guaranteed +1/+1 sooner than having that tactic sit in your hand. There just are. Like, play Mechanicum and play Last Howl, or play Lucretia and just be able to give it on a whim. Speaking of Lucretia, I mean, I think Lucretia gains a lot from compliance.
Yes.
I heard somebody, I'm trying to remember if it was a comment on a video or if it was in a Discord channel, and somebody was like, Oh, like Lucretia. Oh, it was in the global chat. I think it was. It was in global chat, and somebody was talking about, the Lucretia deck they just got slammed with the board because people were doing the classic Lucretia is, 2 underground forts and then they spam a bunch of 1/1s. That is a bad way to play Lucretia, and if you're wise to it, you can blow their whole deck out, and then they have to top deck everything. They can only draw one card and play that one card and hope it sticks. Compliance gives Lucretia players who like that play style a little different way to play, and they can play with compliance and slightly better costed troops and actually play good troops that can stick around longer. Like, whether it's Smirnov's Warriors, McCormick's Reapers, Merritt's Mercs, there are options out there that exist beyond just the 1/1s and the 2/2s that Lucretia can drop really quick. So I like that change. I like Targost. Yeah, Targost is a buff. I played him.
Oh, yeah.
I agree, Chris. I got the same feel for him. I played just a few games with Abaddon because I've got a drop pod, Sons of Horus Abaddon deck, and played it, and it's like, yeah, he sticks. If he sticks, it's game. That is a power card. And if I changed up my build and I put in some escape vents to keep him around, either the first turn I drop him, depending on what if they're a faction that has like an outflank or something, or if I play the escape vent after he attacks, so he gains a second mark, that's powerful. And then on top of that, you throw in other troops that now not only do they have to get rid of Targos, but you've got another Astartes in a drop pod that they have to get rid of Targos, or that Astartes in the drop pod is going to get stronger too, and then it's just going to steamroll. I don't think you need too many more Astartes in drop pods. Targos by himself is going to become a wrecking ball, but that's a strong card. The Punisher, I don't disagree. I think if it sees play, it's going to be a desperate defense deck. It's going to be at lower tier levels. Mars, Prospero, Calf. If a player gets the Punisher as their first legendary, that's now a good legendary for them. Because at that low level play, it's less likely that they're either going to run into hard removal that often, or the hard removal will be used on some of their other higher cost troops. So when they play that one card, their opponents will be sad, and then they'll win the game and they'll feel really good about it. But it's not a card that's going to go in every deck. Targost definitely goes up in rank. Like, I would put him and Vengeful Spirit, like those two. You don't have to play with Balgurst. You don't have to play with with the second wave. Just play with those two and play with all the damage stuff and some other troops if you need to, and you'll be good to go. Eschaton Imperative, and I talked about this on the video I did yesterday. For me, like, I definitely saw the complaints for it, and okay, like I didn't feel I've been playing Corswain. I've also played a lot of Red Loss and a lot of Nemiel, and I'll be honest, like, I wasn't using Eschaton Imperative in Nemiel because at the time Eschaton Imperative affected Dark Angels troops, and a lot of the Nemiel stuff I was playing was neutrals. So now I can at least put it in there as an option, but it wasn't like critical to me. It was very helpful for Red Loss. It was very helpful for Johnson. It was a tool for Corswain, but it wasn't the tool that I used to win. It actually, like, if I usually played Eschaton, it was like to clear a couple threats, and like maybe I had one troop in my hand anyways, so it didn't make a huge difference, whereas those other decks, it makes a big difference. So it felt like the direction that they came at it, I think, might have been fueled by player requests, but I don't know if the way it was changed by itself without any other Dark Angels cards is great. It's not terrible. I'm not going to complain about it. I understand it.
Yeah, it's not dead.
Yeah, it's not dead.
Right.
It still does 2 damage, which is great. I would rather have that than a defensive satellites.
It's already a better Rain of Fire, unless somehow you have sentenced.
Right. So,
Let's be real here. That's not realistic.
Yeah. So I mean, it's a good. It's still a good card. It's just not as powerful as it used to be. And yes, it's not the power card. I think we'll see that. I think Dark Angels will just compensate or continue to play, but it's unfortunate that the ones that are going to compensate easier are Corswain decks and Red Loss and Johnson decks are going to have to figure out a slightly different adjustment. Now, the Herotechnica.
Yeah, I don't even think we mentioned this one.
We did not.
This one annoys me. This one annoys me a bit. I have a reasoning.
Well, yeah. Go ahead. You go ahead first.
Go ahead.
It annoys me because they completely reworked. This isn't a buff. This isn't a nerf. They completely reworked an event card that we technically fought for. So that basically means the cards that we fight for aren't set in stone. We can lose them or gain new versions of them. And I just feel like that's weird to me.
Yeah, there's a difference between having a change to Apotheosis, like a reduction in the health, right? Yeah. Versus this card doesn't. Complete rework. Yeah, this card doesn't do anything that it did before. Like you're not buffing a vehicle. You're not discarding your tactics. You're
in fact adding more cards.
Yeah, you're actually providing multiple marks of chaos, which was not related to the other card at all, to all of your Mechanicum troops, which could be infantry as well. It's like, I mean, I don't know. I mean, don't get me wrong. I think this, as far as a card goes, this is a great card, and I have going to be making some changes to my Ingethel build, because this card with Mechanicum, Death of Innocence Ingethel, this is awesome.
Yeah, this is going to be a good card. It irks me that they completely reworked it out of the blue.
I mean, it doesn't have any loss there. Like you're drawing a card. Like the only downside is you have to have Mechanicum troops on the board. Okay, like that's not hard to. Death of Innocence, Secretary Axiarchs, Lattice Towels, whatever. Like whoever you've already got that has got a mark of chaos that Ingethel threw on them, and they've got a higher attack, or they've got higher health. And then the next round you follow it up and you're like, boom, now they've got 2 marks on them. And maybe those alpha thetas are creating, mechandroids that give more marks of chaos. Like that, she's a brute. I've had since her change, and I was going back and looking at my stats on her because I'm planning on doing a video for her somewhere down the road. Since I changed her deck, because before I used to just use her for challenges, like use troop abilities, so it was like just the shittiest deck, like troops like Bile Cannon and Naga Heil and shit.
Right.
And now I'm like, okay, I'm gonna build the Sirius because now she's got her given +1 health and the marks of chaos changed altogether. This is gonna be great, and it is. And like the win rate with her has gone up, and like there's some crazy combos with just Cygnus Fanatic and Nurglings. That's it. Like those are 2 cards, not kind of everything else that exists in the deck. So if you switch this up now, you throw in Death of Innocence, you throw in Herotechnica, you throw in Mechanicum troops, and you've got some crazy synergy that is just going to be just powerful, like because of the way the marks work. So I'm really looking forward to seeing that in action. With regards to Punisher and Targost, because I kind of want to circle back around, because you were like, I don't think nobody asked for this. I don't think anybody asked for it either. I do think, though, that those 2 cards, I don't think any of these other cards, but I think those 2 cards were a change to bring them in line with power creep from existing cards that are in newer factions. I mean, Targost was a good card, like 5/7 body, but that's really all he was. He was a 5/7 body for 5. And if you look at the last couple of expansions, most of the 5 or 6 drop legendaries had an immediate impact, or a threat, an immediate impact. And he doesn't do that, or he didn't do that. Now he does. So I feel like that's just a slight change to bring them in line. And like Punisher, still not going to be great, but if I can pay 2 energy to deal 2 damage, and my opponent can pay 4 plasma to deal 10 damage with his, massive Volkite beam cannon or whatever, like it's kind of a little bit more in line as opposed to paying 4 to deal 10 on a card that has to survive. And this card can come out at 9 energy versus 10. Still a terrible comparison, don't get me wrong, but I think in terms of cost to damage, they've established that plasma should cost a little bit more, just a little bit more than your traditional energy. It's a second energy source, but you're paying 4 as opposed to 2. Okay, so then that's where it lines up. That's the way I see it.
Mm-hmm. No, that does make sense, and I actually had that thought to myself. Is that part of the reason? Is are they trying to make this match up with the other factions.
Mhm.
And when you just said it, it makes sense. It does. It makes sense that they're trying to match up with others to make sure that the older legions are still viable.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I do think, I mean, I know somebody yesterday was really hopeful on the Discord. They're really hopeful that this is just the first patch. We'll see another one. I don't know if we will. Don't get me wrong. I keep holding my breath for this Knights / Desperate Defense something. I don't care if they only change like Desperate Defense and 2 Knights cards. If it's a minor patch, they'll have done something. Now, if it's just Flame Cannon, I should correct myself. If they change Flame Cannon one more time, and that's the only change that they make to the Knights,
You know what? They're going to buff it just to spite you.
That's
Revert
exactly
it
right.
back to release version.
Yeah, they're like,
Release version.
we've decided to retract all changes to Flame Cannon. It is as it was. I mean, if they make some changes, like a couple cards losing the draw card ability, I'm fine with that. That's where they've touched it. That's how it is. I think the meta has evolved. Some people will say that the meta has wrapped around playing Knights. It's called evolving the meta. That's what happens to a meta. Of course it has. And eventually the Knights will come back in because somebody's going to start playing them again, because the stuff that is beating Knights will get played or circled out of the meta. That is how meta operates. So it's going to happen.
Right.
That's natural. I think the Knights can stand to lose a couple extra card draws, and Desperate Defense can get tweaked a little
They have
bit.
so much card draws. Jesus.
Too much, yeah.
Like, they just have a full stealth board removal. It draws a card. Their heal that returns a deck draws a card.
Yes.
Favor of Mars, I'm pretty sure, draws a card.
Favorite Mars, like I have to check. I don't think that one does, but they have.
Okay.
Healing,
I wouldn't be surprised.
Shield, draw a card. Draw a weapon card.
God.
Like, I mean, it's a little ridiculous. It's a little too much. So I could see them changing those, like 2 or 3 cards. Just take off the draw card. Like, leave it everything else as it is. Just take off the draw card, and you will have a different dynamic altogether.
Yes. Favorite of Mars just gives your Warlord Reactor 2.
I didn't know if it gave Reactor 2 and Drew card or just gave Reactor.
Now, I would like to see that. I don't know if we will. I don't know if we will before we get the expansion. Depends on when the release date is really going to be. Typically when we have a new expansion, most of the patches that they do at that point are really to focus to make sure that, hey, this faction is either not too powerful or is powerful enough to be worthwhile to play. Because, I mean, and then you're going to have another faction that comes out, and they're going to dedicate time to that, then the third faction. Right. So if we're going to get it, we got to get it within like a week or two. Like, that's just the way it's going to be. Or we're not going to get it.
Right. Nope, I'd agree.
Yeah. So, I mean, overall, looking at the patch, those are my thoughts on, like, I like Close Call is cool, and you guys are talking about flankers, and I hadn't thought about the flanking aspect, like returning a Volturax, not a Vorax, but a Volturax would be really nice too.
Yes.
And you can use it because they're lower cost, like late game, that's 9 energy. You could bring it back into hand. I was looking at it more for like the White Scars, like a particular White Scars deck build, and keeping those 3/3 fast attack, boom, back in my hand.
That's exactly what I was thinking of, Scuff. That's
Yeah.
exactly what I was thinking of.
Because you could, and then if you've got those, it's harder to do. You could do those troops where you deal damage every time you return a card to your hand, a troop to your hand. Throw those in with some nerdlings. You might actually have a deck build that could deal some surprising damage just by bouncing stuff to your hand. So I don't know. I think we got some potentials. We got some swing and a misses.
Yes.
And we got some blind sides here altogether. I mean, it's a mixed bag, and like I said, like I think it was like the patch that we didn't know we asked for.
Right.
That's came out of nowhere.
Yes.
That's really,
exactly.
Yeah. Well, if you had to rank the patch, how would you guys rate it on a scale of 1 to 10? With 10 being the best.
10. Really, I thought 10 would be the worst this time around. Just mix it up.
Yeah. Well, we should next time. Next time we'll mix it up.
But then not tell anyone.
Yeah. We'll just say it's a 10. What does that mean? I don't know.
See how it work. I mean, like, I like the Sons of Horus changes, even if it will change nothing in the short or long run when it comes to the Punisher.
Mm-hmm.
But besides that, the rest of it was just kind of to me. I'll give it like a 5 5, really. Sons of Horus, particularly Targost, I believe his name is. That's a good 10 to me.
Mhm.
That's perfect. Everything else,
I'd give it a
solid
6. A solid eh.
It's an
I'd give it a
plus.
6.
A 6, huh?
A 6, yeah.
I feel like I thought about giving it a 6. I think I'm going to give it a 5, though. I feel, and I just not without throwing the number out there. I mean, like, I agree, Targost is good. I like Herotechnica. I like Close Call. I'm okay with Eschaton. It's not great. It's not the way I would have gone about it. I think a lot of people have said that, like, the core, doesn't really affect the core Swain issue. But it's not bad, but at the same time, like, the things that are good are only good for a particular build. Like, Herotechnica is only going to be good for, like, the Death of Innocence builds, or, like, people diving deep in with, like, Marks of Chaos already, like Ingethel, like we talked about. Close Call is only going to be good for those particular instances, which is not going to be every deck. Nobody's going to run it as hard. And Sons of Horus really are only gaining one card that they were probably already using anyways. Whereas a good patch, in my eyes, normally has got changes to either Warlords or significant changes to a card pool where it changes how you play them. And I don't see that really here at all. I mean, yeah. So I think a 5.
Look, I'm sticking with my 6. Okay. I'm bring the curve up to 5.33. Okay.
That's it. That's it. There you go. You raise the curve. Raise the curve. Well, that's the patch. It's not huge. It's not significant, but it's there.
It's enough where the devs can say they changed the game this time.
This is true, and I mean, it had been a couple weeks since we had anything else. So, like I said, I hope we get something for a particular KH card pool within the next couple of weeks. But until then, we will have to wait and see. So let's talk about, I guess, when we're not doing Legions. I mean, we've talked about the Legions. We've talked about factions that we enjoy, a little bit of lore. Chris, on your end. Talked about the patch, and there really isn't a whole lot else going on in game just yet. So what do you do when you're not playing Legions?
Work a lot. I do a lot of stuff professionally, but when I have downtime, I actually either try to catch up on some reading, mostly lore of like 40K and such. But I've gotten back into the hobby of painting over the last 6 months to a year, basically since COVID. So with that being said, I've been painting miniatures. Like right now I'm working on a big scenery piece that my cousin gave me, one of the landing pads for the Valkyries.
Oh, nice.
I like painting like heroes and stuff now. So stuff like that, and then just, normal family stuff, hanging out and things like that. So just trying to keep it relaxed as much as possible as, the whole pandemic thing plays out. And, it's just life gets busy, but, being able to move forward and, being able to relax helps out. So,
yeah,
just, I know that's not a very bland answer, but that's what I try to do. Hopefully over the summer, actually take vacations again, things like that, but we've got to get there first. So.
Right. Well, I'm telling you, I'm jealous of you doing the painting, because that was something I thought about doing at the start of everything, and I have not been able to. Like, I built the Indominus box models, and I got paints for them. I got some paints. I didn't get a full paint for all because I'm still not sure how I want to do my Primaris or my Necrons, but I was like, all right, I'm gonna dive back into it. I'm gonna go painting, but I don't have the setup in my house to do it. The table that I would use is where my workstation is at right now, so that's not really use, and the rest of the house is really small, and I've got my counter here where I've got the laptop doing all the recording and stuff like that. So I envy you. So enjoy it. The majority of my free time, I think, has been D&D stuff, D&D prep and whatnot.
Oh, okay.
Well,
I haven't done that.
Yeah, and Legion stuff. So
I'm a little jealous of the D&D. It's been a long time since I've been able to play. So Not just because of COVID, but life happens, and then you move and all that stuff, and then you're like, okay, now I've got to go acquire everybody again, and so I'm jealous of the D&D stuff.
I'll take it.
But enjoy.
How about you, Axel? What you been up to?
I mean, up to too much. Just actually finished another campaign session tonight. The party almost sold. One of the members straight up just sold his soul to the devil by accident, because that's the type of person he is. We don't exactly question him. He's a great guy, but not too bright.
There you go.
Yeah, and that and work. Besides that, I've just been pretty much doing that. I don't have much free time, sadly. So
Yeah.
I wish I could get more.
I hear you. I'm hoping summertime hits. Like Chris said, it'd be great to take a vacation. If things line up and I can actually take a vacation and get out somewhere. I don't know where it would go. I don't know what I would do. It would be nice to be something to try, but that's about it. We got a lot of stuff in the house to keep us occupied, I guess. We got the game, we got computers, we got internet, but I'd like to get away and actually get away.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Get away now.
I didn't know what you were. I knew you were going to go for a song. I didn't know if you were going to go the I want to get away, or you're going to go to that one. It was a 50-50.
It was a 50-50, and I was like, you know what? Let's go with some RHCP.
Very good. Very good.
I expect nothing less.
I'm personally trying to hope that even just to get camping or something involved, but the whole pandemic makes life difficult. Just something, because I know, like you said, you have everything inside your house and you can do things, but sometimes the four walls they get a little small, and you're like, okay, I need to do something different. I got to do something. So that's what I'm hoping for, especially as everything moves forward. So
Yep. Well, yeah, we got hobby stores can open back up again. That'd be great to actually play games, people face to face.
Yes,
and we're doing the Blood Bowl League in the Screen Discord, so that's fun. Blood Bowl 2, that's digital, and that's actually, for me, I mean, where I'm at, even if I go to the hobby store, it's like a 9% chance I'll actually run into somebody who's actually playing a GW game. They sell them. I've never seen anybody actually play or talk about it. It's all Magic, it's all Pokemon, or it's Dice Masters. Dice Masters is still big out here, which amazes me. Oh, which reminds me, I never got to talk about this. And I mean, have you guys played the 40K Dice Masters? Have you guys ever played Dice Masters at all?
Yeah.
I am not familiar with that.
Okay, Dice Masters is, you know what a deck building game is. Have you ever played a deck builder?
So that answer would be no. Sorry.
Okay, a deck builder is it's like a card game, but it's not a collectible card game. It is a game in the box, and the game itself is collecting cards to build your deck, to play, to buy more cards, and blah 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 blah. I'm trying to equate it to like a game, like if you were to play, I think, Crazy Eights or something like that, like with a 52 card game. Like you'll start with a 10 card deck or a 5 card deck, and over the course of your turns, your deck turns into 20 cards, and those 20 cards all do different things, and each of your turns is basically cycling through your deck and playing the cards you have in a certain order to acquire better cards from a set pool. Well, Dice Masters is a game by WizKids, and it's kind of like that, except you roll dice, and it incorporates the elements of purchasing better cards to add to your pool of dice, but it also has the elements of like a Magic the Gathering, where once you have a dice rolled out, let's say you purchase I'm gonna use the Marvel universe because their first like 3 sets were Marvel stuff. So like let's say you pull out Captain America, and you purchase a Captain America die, and you roll the Captain America die, and that's your character, and he's got stats on them, and you can put him up top. Not only do you have him as a blocker, as a magic creature or whatever, but you have his ability that comes on his card, and then you can use that. It's a little abstract without actually being able to show you physically, but that's how it plays. Well, it's the same game system. Dice Masters is a game system that just has different IPs. They have Marvel, they have DC, they have Ninja Turtles, they have Yu-Gi-Oh!, Dungeons & Dragons. Somewhere along the way, they did a 40K, and the box set is Ultramarines versus Nurgle versus Mortarians. It's Gilliman versus Mortarian.
Okay.
But they have a couple expansions. They have an Orcs expansion and they have a Space Wolves expansion. And I'm tempted to play it, to pick it up, because then you just have it as a simple box game, and you're like, hey, do you want to play Orcs? I don't think they have Eldar, they don't have Necrons. I don't even know if they're doing any more expansions beyond that, because it's been out for like a year. But you could have, like, in that expansion, you could have, like, okay, you have your Ard Boys, you have your Knob, you have your Battle Wagon, whatever, and you build your deck and then roll your dice and then purchase those cards, or you play with the Space Wolves and do the same thing with the Space Wolves or the Ultramarines. I don't know. It's a different game altogether, and it's not 40K. It's not a card game. But it's Dice Masters. So I don't know how to. I'm not trying to sell it. I'm trying to undersell it. I think I'm not thrilled with Dice Masters.
Trying to tell us about a new thing we've never heard of, while also telling us not to play it. I understand.
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm trying to do. I won't deny that.
Look, there's the internet. While you were discussing it, I was Googling it, so I've got a better understanding, but I'm gonna have to dive into this because this seems interesting.
You can see the package art, you can see what it is, and you're like, oh, hey, had I not come across this when I was ordering other card game stuff in just one of the websites that I use. I would have been like 40K, because I'm already familiar with Dice Masters, but I was like, 40K, really? And I looked into it and I'm like, oh, okay, well, don't I dive into it? I don't know. The problem with Dice Masters is, we talked about storage. You have to store cards and dice. Mm-hmm. And that's, look, storage is finite in this small place. Like, I'm still trying to figure out what to do with these X-Wing models.
I understand. I understand completely. When you have the 40K models and they take up a whole boatload of space, I completely understand.
Yeah. Like, you need to have a shelf, and you have to have special carrying cases and stuff to fit them in there. Yeah. Yep. So, I don't know. I'll have to think about it. Like, I'll have to maybe come back around to it if I ever start playing it. But if you dive into it, let me know what you think. Because it's I mean, and Dice Master games are pretty quick too. They're not like an hour to play. You could play a Dice Masters game in probably like 20 minutes once you know how to play. That's important. You do have to know how to play the game.
Gotcha. Makes sense.
Yeah.
You don't want to just roll dice and go, all right, here you go, I won. Yeah. Why? Because I said so.
I'm just rolling dice. What's happening? You rolled the dice really good.
Exactly.
I used to play a game with a friend of ours. Like, we were really bored. This is how bored we were. This is before we were waiting for an RPG session to start. So we were just rolling a D20, and we made the whole game about rolling a D20. So you roll a D20, and your goal is to get to either 20 or negative 20. And every roll you can add or subtract, but you can't go over the 20. So if you're at a 13 value and you roll a 19, you have to subtract the 19. You can't add the 19. So then you go to negative 6. And the entire game, we spent like an hour just rolling a D20 between the two of us and like seeing how many like wins we could get over each other.
That's funny.
That was I don't know if that's a highlight or a low light of my gaming career.
Sounds like y'all went crazy.
It really was. It was because like somebody came over, one of our friends came over, was like, "What are you guys doing?" I'm like, "I'm trying to get to 20." Like, they're just watching us roll D20. It's like, okay, like I'm like, okay, that's 10. And then he rolls a 5. He's like, okay, 15. I'm like, and I roll a 3. I'm like, 12. You have to play it cautiously. Do you go high? Do you go low? There's a strategy within this game of just rolling a D20.
Like I just said, going crazy.
Sounds like it sounds a little bit like cornhole, where you have to throw it and you have to make sure to pick your way. But yeah, I understand.
Oh, cornhole, man. Wait, are you talking about with the bag and the hole?
Yeah, because if you go over, if you go over, you can go back. If you go past 21, not to say it's anywhere near the same, but if you go past the point value, you go back to I think it's like 17 or 18, and you got to do it again. So, yep.
I didn't know for the longest time that was called cornhole. I just thought it was like beanbag toss.
Yeah, I didn't think it was called cornhole either, and then I've been schooled enough that I know it's
the first time somebody said, you want to play cornhole, I thought it was like a dirty game. I was like, what?
Right.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
I was like, we are at work, madam.
Right. No, I agree with you. And then it's like, oh yeah, that's okay. That's fine. Beanbag talks. Couldn't call it that. Okay, whatever.
I guess it's shorter amount of, whatever, syllables.
Exactly. Exactly. So.
Well, I guess we should talk about plugs. We've got some time. If there's anything you want to plug, Chris.
I don't have anything to plug. I just really enjoy being able to have a conversation and being able to be in Discord and all that stuff to actually learn a card game for the first time. So I would say if you had to take a plug, make sure take advantage of the resources with the community that exists for Horus Heresy Legions. One of the things, and I think it's been touched on other podcasts, but everybody. It has been helpful. Like I haven't gotten, I think they used the word like toxicity or something like that. Like I haven't really met anybody that's been negative or, that type of thing. Everybody's supportive, trying to help you learn the game. So if you have any questions or anything like that, feel free to reach out, especially the community. If people have questions that I may be able to answer, feel free to ping me. I don't mind. My name's still the handle Chrisofthemount. So that's no big deal. But just the idea that take advantage of what's out there and don't feel like you can't ask questions or things like that, because everybody's pretty helpful. And that to me is a unique experience. Just from my 40K days, I am very much used to being, kind of stared at or whatever because you don't play the right army or you don't do the right thing. Nobody really gets that way. So like I said, I don't have anything to plug, but just advocating that take advantage of the resources if you want to dive into it. I know the game can be a little bit intimidating at first, especially trying to get up to curve, but that's why the community's there. Just, feel free to reach out. And I think anybody will help you as long as you put in the effort and all that stuff. I think nobody's going to have any issues having a conversation, trying to help you tweak your deck and things like that. So that's really all I had. I mean, like I said, I don't really have anything to plug.
All right. Axel, how about you?
I would plug my homie Dorn like I did last time, but he judged the way I say Erebus just because it spites people instead of Erebus.
It's Erebus.
Yes, but it's pure spite in my voice as I say Erebus, and he judged me for that. No, I'll still plug Dorn. Everything will be our buddies on Instagram and Drew Lee Clark. Those are his two main sources of Instagram. I'm still not saying it right, by the way. I refuse to on merit alone.
You're gonna stick to your guns on that?
Yeah, well, that's what Chaos would want me to do.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm gonna plug deck slots because this is it. This is the 0 hour. We are potentially weeks away from the new expansion. We need those deck slots. We need them hard, guys. We need new deck slots.
They should do a scuff patch. And all it is like 50 deck slots.
That's what I envision.
Just say it's for scuff. That's all it is. And you get a special, like a back on your deck, and it's just deck slots. It's all it is.
It just is like a stamp. It says deck slot. That's right. You know where it's coming from. Yeah, we're gonna get them. I mean, when they open up the new expansion, we're gonna need 3 to 12 new slots. So that's 2 rows right there.
What would you do if they took some away, though?
I've been saying
this every podcast. Remove deck slots just to fight stuff.
The thing is, with my anal retentiveness, like the way my slots and my decks are arrayed, if it's not in there, if I can't fit it in there, I don't play them. So for me, I do it in order of faction release, and then Warlord rarity, and then so. First top, I've got Sons of Horus, and that ends with Horus, and then I've got Emperor's Children that ends with Fulgrim, and then so on and so forth. So at the very bottom, it's Imperial Knights, because they're the last slot in there. So if we got 3 new Imperial Fists, I couldn't fit them on there, and I wouldn't be able to play Imperial Fists, and that's why it's so important to get those deck slots.
Okay.
Because I will have to break my code of anal retentiveness honor to put a deck for Imperial Fists into my deck slot spot, and something would have to go. I don't know what it would be. It would probably be an Imperial Knight deck, but I mean, I don't know which one. I don't want to have to make that choice, man. I don't want to have to make that call.
Right. So then I'll plug for deck slots.
Plug the deck slots.
I'll plug for deck slots.
I'll also plug my YouTube channel, Scuffy on YouTube. I'm doing I do videos there all the time, but I'm covering the World Cup. I just put up this morning, I think, the World Cup qualifiers for the USA Mexico round 1, round 2 games that I played. So I'm going to keep providing coverage on that, whether that's my games or how the qualifiers are going, when the teams are selected, what that all consists of. We're going to be doing coverage here on the podcast as well as on that channel. And then Bar Night Legions. We've got a Bar Night Legions coming up on the 24th, I believe. I gotta take the calendar here. Yeah, the 24th of April. If you are interested in playing some casual fun, and when I say casual, it's B-tier decks, so you're not going to see those warlords that are dominant on the board that often. Occasionally we allow them, but there's format kind of has some other restrictions in there. But it's really just people having fun, chatting on the Vox, drinking and playing to see who is going to be the Meodmeister. And it's a good time all around. Get a lot of variety of players, from people who play high top 50 to people who just play casual low tier, who have low collections. I think last tournament we had a brand new player join in. So the 24th is a odds and evens format, and that is your deck. You have 2 decks. One of your decks has to be comprised entirely of odd numbered cards, and the other deck has to be comprised completely of even numbered cards. 0 cost cards are not allowed. So it's going to be interesting to see what people come up with. And I've seen a couple of people making some comments as far as they're trying to build decks, and they're getting frustrated because some of these things are just not looking really good. And that's half of the fun, because if nobody's deck looks really good, then everybody's deck is funky. And if everybody's deck is funky, then it's going to be a funky time. So
Absolutely.
That's right. So that's what I've got.
Sounds like a lot of fun.
Yes, you should check it out if you got the time. I know Saturday night sometimes can be hard for availability. I think we start that one at 7 p.m. U.S. Central Time. So
Gotcha.
that is it. That's what I've got to plug.
All right.
Trying to think if we've got anything else. I think that's it. We covered the plugs. We covered the patch. We covered the hobby. We covered the updates. We covered the hopeful wishes for what we'd like to see with Desperate Defense and
Night Flame Cannon being reverted to old version.
Yes.
Look, I'll tell you what. If they bring back Night Flame Cannon to day one, I won't complain. But I'm gonna make 100 people complain because I'm gonna play the Night Flame Cannon out the wazoo.
That's what I'm gonna plug now.
Bring back old Night Flame Cannon.
Bring back day one Flame Cannon, day one Magnus. Let's go.
No, revert all the nerfs they've ever done and keep all the buffs. I want Zero Energy Ingacel. I want old Canis Vertex in his prime.
I will be honest. I would not mind seeing that for a day, just to see how.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Battle of the Titans.
Yeah, just to see how crazy it would be. That would be cool for a day when everything's broken. Nothing's broken.
Everything's broken.
It'd be perfect.
Just set up 1 week and just say it's broken.
This is
Do what you want.
That could have been a great April Fool's.
That could have been.
Maybe
that's a better idea than having Alpharius. I like it.
Yeah.
Instead, they pulled the ultimate prank. They added a feature we all wanted and then removed it the next day.
2022. Let's see it. April 1st, 2022. Give us the worst patch of all time. Well, thanks for joining us on the podcast tonight, Chris. Appreciate it.
No problem. Thank you.
And
I appreciate being on.
Yeah, and if there are anybody out there who's listened who wants to be on, or who is, I usually put this at the start of the podcast, but send me a PM message. Hit us up on Discord or through Reddit or Facebook, wherever you can send your message at. We try to coordinate as best as we can. As I say every week, it's a podcast by players for players, and certainly want to, give a chance to talk with other folks in our community, see what their perspective is on the game, what got them involved, because everybody's got a unique experience and something that they enjoy. We all enjoy it together, so appreciate you being part of it.
Well, thank you again, Scuff and Axel, for bringing me on. I really appreciated spending time with you all, and hopefully I was able to help out, and, I don't really know how else to say it, so just thank you.
All right. Well, you're welcome. And with that said, we will call it a night. Thank you, everybody. Bye.
All right. Have a good day. Or see you later. Bye.
A magnificent ending.
This has been another episode of the Warp Chatter Podcast. Thank you for listening.
Yes. Yes. Shh. It's over. Don't fight it.